Today with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, if you look on the Sharp Interactive board, you see the Konica Minolta logo. You see a picture of the Workplace Hub. Between those two pictures, it said, did the Workplace Hub get hacked? At the top of the board, it says, what if Visual Edge got hacked? I'm going to get to this conversation about Visual Edge getting hacked at the end of today's episode. And that kind of came into my mind when I was reading this letter that Sam Arago, the president of Konica Minolta Business USA, had sent out to all the dealer partners. I'm reading this letter that Sam had sent out, and this letter is regarding the Stormous Ransomware Group. So anytime you hear ransomware, letter coming from the CEO, say, oh, what's going on with this? What kind of data got lost? Everybody's thinking the worst, right? Well, I'm reading this letter. He references an article online. I found an article online, and I'm reading the article that I found online, and I'm comparing that article to Sam's response. And I got to be honest with you, folks, after I read Sam's response, after I read the article, and I did this a couple of different times, I think that the letter that Sam wrote is a lot like the Workplace Hub description. It's kind of like a word salad, and by the time you get done reading it, you're not really sure if everything's okay or not. And when you're talking about ransomware, I think you got to be absolutely proof positive that the company has a clear direction on what they're going to do about this. And I don't get that from Sam's letter. And I get it, maybe Sam thinks that every single person that's out there that's a dealer partner of theirs is completely educated on cybersecurity. And maybe they all got their own CTOs and they're reading Sam's response and they're all saying, oh, that's fine, no big deal. They're on it. But I'm thinking there could be some naive dealers out there, and that letter could end up in some customers' hands, and they're looking at this thing and they're thinking to themselves, well, I'm kind of confused because the article I read doesn't really match this letter. I'm just confused. So I really think that after today's episode, maybe Sam and you could get your CTO and you could go on the show with the guy with the hat and you could kind of talk about this a little bit more detail, because I think that conversation would go over pretty well. As a matter of fact, I think Andy would get all kinds of views on his channel if you did that. But ladies and gentlemen, let me just read this letter, and then we're going to read the online article. And let me just share my thoughts. March 30th, 2023, to our dealer partners. Earlier this week, there was a published article online stating that Konica Minolta had been attacked by the Stormous Ransom Group. The company worked quickly to investigate if there was any breach or data compromise. All reports from our subsidiaries and affiliates, along with an analysis conducted by our managed service provider, have led us to conclude that there are no indicators of compromise. There is simply no evidence to support a breach or data leakage from our networks. Our research indicates that the Stormous Group is known for using scare tactics to induce a company into paying a ransom for non-sensitive data that is already publicly available. This is the last sentence and how he wraps this up. We will continue our vigilance and work closely with all Konica Minolta companies to monitor this over the next few weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the last sentence scares me the most. And I'm just going to give some pro bono advice to Sam over there at Konica Minolta. Anytime we're talking about a ransomware attack, I think I would probably have the CTO of the company write the letter. And the CTO of the company could put in that letter, we're working very closely with our CEO, Sam Arago, and all of our executive team. And then share the timeline with a whole lot more detail. Because, when people see, ransom attack, data leakage, whether you found any or not, but you're finding it, you're concerned enough to send out the letter based on this article, and then you say that you're going to monitor this over the next few weeks. I'm thinking to myself, are we all going to sit around and wait 3 weeks to see how much data got stolen, or what's going on with this? And I think that's where that CTO probably could have helped guide a little bit better with some of the verbiage in the letter, is my thinking. Because I wouldn't want, when there's a ransom attack or a ransom issue, some of those issues, it takes communication on an hourly basis, on a daily basis. But this is kind of a wide open space. We're gonna, when you use the word vigilance and work closely, and then you say you're gonna monitor it over the next few weeks, it's just kind of really, I think we could have done a better job with that. I also have a question regarding let me just read this part. The company worked quickly to investigate if there was any breach or data compromise. All reports from our subsidiaries and affiliates, along with an analysis conducted by our managed services provider, have led us to conclude. Who is the managed services provider for Konica Minolta? I mean, are you talking about all covered, or are you talking about your managed cybersecurity services vendor? Because a lot of companies, they don't police themselves, if you will, so you could easily have an outside cybersecurity services vendor that's handling the cybersecurity issues for Konica Minolta. But the way you say that, it's a managed service provider, and everybody out there would be thinking like me, is that all covered? And if it is all covered, why wouldn't you say all covered? I just thought that was kind of interesting to me. And folks, it says here there's simply no evidence to support a breach or data leakage from our networks. Let me just read this again, so when we go to this article, we can kind of put all this together. Our research indicates that the Stormous Group is known for using scare tactics to induce a company into paying a ransom for non-sensitive data that is already publicly available. So if I read this, I'm thinking, okay, this group's just making up a bunch of crap, and there's an article out there that's made up a bunch of crap, and even if they got the data, it's non-sensitive, it's already public. That's kind of what I'm thinking, right? I mean, that's what anybody would think from that letter. Now let's look at this article, because this is where it gets a little bit weird to me. So we have this group out there, the Cyber Express. They put this blog out there, and they're talking about, let me just read the headline. Konica Minolta cyber attack puts large-scale information at risk. Stormous Ransom Group claims the attack. The group claimed to have published 14% of the company's data, making Konica Minolta cyber attack another incident on the long list of businesses and organizations that have fallen prey to cybersecurity incidents in recent years. They're very specific on this 14% of the company's data. If I'm Konica Minolta, and somebody out there publishes something that says, hey, you got 14% of the company's data, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? What data? And I think that this article would have been a great example to use in the letter that Sam wrote, or the CTO probably should have wrote it. But they could have showed this article and then defeated it all as they went. But let me read more about this, because it gets a little bit interesting. Konica Minolta, Japanese multinational technology company, has become the latest victim of the notorious Stormous ransomware group. The group claimed to have published 14% of the company's data, making Konica Minolta cyber attack another incident on the long list of businesses and organizations that have fallen prey to cybersecurity incidents in recent years. If I'm a dealer and I don't have a CTO, and I'm just the guy that runs out there and schleps copy machines and puts toner in them, and I read that, it sounds like it happened. It sounds like 14% of the data was out there. It's already been public. How much of that 14% of the data is my data? You see what I'm saying? This is like saying it happened. Let me just read this, because I think this is interesting to me. Konica Minolta has not disclosed the extent of the damages caused by the attack, but the fact that the 14% of the company's data has been published suggests the breach may have been significant. The Cyber Express has contacted the Japanese megacorp, but has not received any response about the cyber attack. And I'm just thinking to myself, Konica Minolta, why wouldn't you respond back to these people? Because if all this is nonsense, I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? None of this shit happened. But I don't get that. It sounds like you're responding to an article. Maybe this isn't the article you're responding to. I don't know. But you're responding to an article, and the article's out there clearly defining that you got hacked, that 14% of your data has already been published. And I just don't get that happened when I read your letter. And so I'm thinking to myself, so is the Cyber Express, this blog over here, is this like the vehicle that alerts the company? Like the ransom, like maybe Stormous Ransom has a connection with the Cyber Express. They say, hey, we want you to publish this article. Go ahead and tell them we got 14% of their data. We've already published the 14% of their data. And you need to call them up and see if they'll pay. I mean, maybe the people in Ukraine aren't allowed to make long-distance phone calls, so they reach out to the Cyber Express people. Folks, I realize I'm being a little sarcastic here, but at the end of the day, when you read this, and you're naive, whether you're a customer or whether you're a naive dealer around cybersecurity, and then you read Konica Minolta's response, it leaves you with an impression that, are they hacked? The 14%, they've already released the data. What data did they release? And I think that's something Konica Minolta could probably explain a whole lot better. They could, folks. And at the end of the day, we got, they love to throw out these, all covered cybersecurity awards every other day. They're always talking about all the awards they won. It wasn't, over the last 2.5 years, I've been pretty critical of Konica Minolta and their ability not to be able to produce operating profit. I've called them out many times. Could you share the details around all covered? They don't ever do that. We noticed this year, which, by the way, their fiscal year ending March 2023 ends today. The numbers will be out pretty soon. I'm looking forward to those numbers. But this year, they seem to be doing a little bit better with the operating profit. But folks, there's a couple years there where it was terrible. I mean, remember the episode I did where I put a bunch of money on a plate, I poured ketchup all over it, I said it's Konica Minolta bleeding cash, and I threw that up on the screen, and that was one of the most watched videos I've ever done. I guess that's what the people over at ENX call clickbait. But ladies and gentlemen, the reality of it is, this letter, or this article, and the letter or the response from Konica Minolta still leave some questions. Our research indicates that the Stormous Group is known for using scare tactics. Did they scare you? Is this part of their scare tactics? We're going to publish this article, and then you're not even going to follow up with the people that published the article? That seems kind of bizarre to me. I mean, they said, unless they're lying, they could be lying. Hey, we reached out to Konica Minolta, and we haven't heard back from them. And so instead of reaching back out to the people that wrote the article, you write a letter to all the dealer partners. There's something missing there. It doesn't make any sense for me. And at the end of the day, that last sentence is just kind of makes me think you kind of just threw this together. It's kind of like you got the word salad people together. Hey, I need the people that wrote the brochure for the Workplace Hub to help me write a letter to the dealers about this Stormous ransomware group. And I'm being a little bit, tough there on that, because I think we need to be a whole lot more clear, especially around ransomware, and telling the dealer community that you're going to monitor this over the next few weeks. I think we need to have a little bit more detailed timeline on that. Or we should have at least really nailed that article and took it by point, that it's all just made up horse shit, because you don't really get that from the letter you wrote. If that was your intention, it didn't work for me, and I'm thinking if it didn't work for me, it probably didn't work for some other people too. So Konica Minolta, the question is, are you affected by this Stormous ransomware group? What are the details of that? They say they released 14% of the data. What exactly did they release? And if it's all public information anyway, then just share what they released. Because a lot of dealers are probably thinking to themselves, what's public information? I mean, what information does Konica have about me that they consider to be public? Because maybe I don't. Just something to think about. Ladies and gentlemen, now I want to address what I say at the very top of this page. What if Visual Edge got hacked? So let me just jump on here and we'll wrap today's video up. Over a month ago, I published that very first video talking about Visual Edge having the loan and non-accrual of CCR5 rating from the BDC credit reporter. I have not heard anything from Austin. No one in our industry has addressed any of this stuff. None of our industry's media has addressed any of this stuff. Austin sends out an email and says the commentator's completely misinformed, but he doesn't address the audience on why I'm misinformed. Austin runs around and talks about the copiers they sold. Thank God they got it in before closeout Friday. I almost died when I heard that. And at the end of the day, we're not addressing any realities of what's going on at Visual Edge. So the question is, what if Visual Edge got hacked? What if Visual Edge got a ransom attack? Could they pay the ransom? Who would pay the ransom? Who do they even call over at Visual Edge? Is Austin still the CEO and chairman? Do they call Ares Capital? And ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying this because they're running around the whole world talking about how great they are with IT services. They don't address any of the concerns that I brought up. I've done 5 episodes. And when this letter came from Sam, when Sam's talking to the dealers about the Stormous Ransom Group, I'm thinking to myself, holy crap, what would happen if Visual Edge got hacked? What would happen to the customers if it got hacked? Because everybody's out in limbo land. Because Visual Edge won't answer any of the questions, won't address any of the realities. Folks, it's pretty scary stuff when you think about it. And I 100% blame all the media out there, the brochure writers as I call them. I blame all of them because they don't know how to address realities in our marketplace. But if you leave it up to me, I'll address them because everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see y'all on Monday.